This is not what we agreed upon!
Don't you dare talk to me like that!
Why are you doing this, Mom?
They tell you trust is the bedrock of marriage. But what if that bedrock was poured over rot? What if the whole thing sat on unseen fractures for years? I learned the answer the hard way. My wife said she was working night shifts at the hospital. In truth, she was checking into boutique hotel suites, laughing over cocktails on someone else's tab. The real blow came when I discovered the truth about our youngest, then the whole picture collapsed like brittle plaster. My name is Owen Blake. I'm 42, and I run a small commercial cleaning and restoration business out of an old barn on the edge of the Vermont Valley. I started it with a dented pickup, a hand-me-down buffer, and a stubborn refusal to fail. 12 years later, I've got 8 people on the payroll, contracts with half the office blocks and inns up and down the county, and a reputation for showing up and fixing what other folks ignore. It's honest work. It pays our bills. It kept us fed. Only the us part became complicated. My wife, Maeve, and I have 3 kids, Noah, 16, who reads people like a playbook, Grace, 12, who asks too many questions and feels everything, and Ben, 8, who still believes his father can mend anything with duct tape and a stern look. Maeve is 38 and she used to work nights at Stowe County Medical Center. At least that's the story she told. Those last 2 kids, Grace and Ben, weren't part of her plan. She told me that once early on, clear as a broken bell. After Noah, Maeve wanted to stop. 1 was enough, she said. Kids were expensive and messy and would ruin her career. I wanted a fuller house. Maybe I was selfish, maybe I was just afraid of the quiet that comes from being the only child. So when the condoms failed, twice, neither of us cried at the idea of more chaos. But neither did our marriage stay simple. Maeve never said those things to the kids. She never told them she hadn't wanted them. But sometimes, at night, I would hear her whispering into the phone with her mother, Evelyn, about feeling trapped. That should have been a crack to pry open, my first alarm. Instead, I told myself she was tired. I told myself she'd come back around. Instead, she retreated. Picked up extra shifts, as she called them. Came home exhausted, wired, distant. The kids noticed. Noah started asking why Mom never came to his basketball games. Little things stacked into a cliff. It was a Tuesday, ordinary as wood smoke and school lunches, when the morning that altered everything began. Maeve was dressed in scrubs that looked suspiciously new. Her hair was arranged the way she used to save for date nights. There was more makeup than one usually bothers with for the ER. "You look good," I said without thinking. She glanced at me, hits of annoyance in her eyes. "Thanks, Owen," she said, fingers on her phone. "I'll be late tonight. Dr. McKay scheduled extra surgeries." The name slipped out like a switchblade, too sharp, too rehearsed. Her eyes tightened, the annoyance flaring. "Yes, Owen. Again. Some of us have jobs that actually matter." The tone landed like a thrown plate. I swallowed it down. Not in front of the kids. But something cold had lodged in my ribs. That afternoon I was at a rundown office building overseeing a strip of night cleaning when my phone lit up. Sam Porter, an old army buddy, on the line. "Owen, might be nothing," he said. "But I saw Maeve last night at Harrigan's Steakhouse. With a man in a nice suit." My hand went unmoving on the mop handle. Harrigan's is the kind of place she complained about, overpriced, ostentatious, not our scene. "What did he look like?" I asked before I knew I would. "Older. Silver hair. Fancy watch. Looked like money." That night she came in after midnight, soft-footed like a guilty thing, and I pretended to be asleep. The smell of cologne on her jacket cut through that pretense like diesel through fog. For the first time in 18 years I had to ask myself if I even knew the shape of her face anymore. The days after Sam's call I started watching for small misalignments, the way a machine shows where the phone left face down on the kitchen counter, the shower taken immediately after she came home when once she would have flopped on the couch, new underwear that didn't belong in the drawer where I kept the boring, serviceable things. Those little details were like oil leaks on a perfectly tuned engine, signs of a problem beneath the surface. On Thursday, feeling like a locksmith about to test a lock's integrity, I drove to Stowe County Medical Center. My hands sweated on the wheel. I walked the fluorescent corridors feeling out of place among nurses and visitors. At the receptionist desk I found Clara Benson, a woman I'd met at hospital fundraisers. "Owen," she said, surprised. "Is everything okay with Maeve?" I gave her the practiced concerned husband face. "She's been doing so many extra shifts. I thought I'd bring her coffee. Is she around?" Clara's face tightened. "Extra shifts? Owen, Maeve hasn't been picking up overtime for 2 months. Dr. McKay's been grumbling about it." The words hit my chest like a dropped toolbox. 2 months. All that time she'd been telling me the hospital was short-staffed while she was elsewhere. Walking out the automatic doors, I felt the barn door of my life slam. If the marriage was a machine, a part had been replaced without my knowledge, quietly and with malice. I did something I swore I wouldn't. I called Tom Harris, a retired Army man who ran a small private investigation operation out of a converted garage, the kind of guy who can make a breadcrumb trail of lies turn into a string of damning photographs. Tom and I had gone through firefights and sleepless nights together in Iraq. If anyone could attach a sensor to a truth, it was him. We met at a diner on the edge of town. He pushed a tiny black rectangle across the formica like it was a holy relic. "Magnetic tracker," he said. "Battery lasts 3 weeks. I monitor remotely, follow when it goes somewhere interesting. 200 a day plus expenses." I pushed 400 across the table. 2 days, I told myself. That night, after Maeve had kissed me goodnight and mouthed some exhausted apology about surgeries, I went to the garage. My hands were steady, which surprised me. I found a place under her car's rear bumper that would hide the tracker from casual eyes, clicked it into place, and felt the satisfying soft thud like a bolt seating in a good hinge. Walking back into the house I felt unmoored, like a man sitting in his own skin and realizing someone had swapped his reflection. Tom's first message came Saturday evening while I was helping Ben with math. "Got something? Check your email," it said. The photographs emptied me. Maeve's car outside the Marriott downtown. Her arm through the elbow of a man who matched Sam's description, silver hair, a suit that could have bought our house. Timestamp, 2:47 p.m., when she was supposed to be on call. The next picture had them in the hotel bar, close, his hand on her knee. Maeve laughing in a way I hadn't heard in years, unfettered, alive. The stinger arrived in the last shot, both of them entering an elevator, fingers intertwined, eyes locked like teenagers. 4:23 p.m. 2 hours of claiming to be tied to medicine while she was tied to someone else. My reaction wasn't fury at first. Fury came later. Initially it was a clinical acceptance, the cold clarity of a mechanic who recognizes a cracked camshaft. The machine is compromised. That Sunday morning I was flipping pancakes when Maeve announced she had picked up a shift. Noah raised an eyebrow. "On a Sunday?" he asked. "You never work Sundays." Maeve's jaw tightened. "Well, I do now," she replied, sharp. "Some of us have responsibilities." After she left I texted Tom. On the move again, he replied. Not to the hospital, heading east toward the business district. An hour later he sent the place, Maplewood Country Club, members only, rich men polishing their egos with golf clubs and old money. When Tom traced the plate, the man had a name, Arthur Hale, 48, CEO of Hale Development, married to Helena Hale for 22 years, 3 kids, a net worth people joked about in the paper. The puzzle pieces slotted into place. Maeve wasn't having a fling. She was trading up, aiming for a different engine entirely, one that didn't rattle or smell like cleaning solvent and hot tea. I spent the rest of Sunday plotting, but not a confrontation. Confrontations give liars a stage to perform and weave more stories. I started thinking protection, of my business, of the kids, of what I had spent a decade building. That evening she came home glowing, breathless with the kind of cheer she had carried only when in that hotel bar. Dr. McKay thanked me for covering the surgery, she said, handing me a damp towel like an apology. She hummed a tune that had been in the background of those photos. I recognized it now the way a metalworker recognizes a particular pitch. Monday I did something I never imagined myself doing. I walked into a small law office above a hardware store and sat with Mark Whitaker, a divorce attorney Tom recommended. Whitaker was thin, older, and practiced at reading men like instruction manuals. I laid out everything, the photographs, the license plate check, the pattern of absences. Whitaker asked the practical questions: how long? How often? Age of kids? He said custody fights could be messy. He said documentation matters. He told me to keep a journal of every absence, every lie. So I did. I started cataloging the small betrayals like inventory: Maeve's phone face down, her late nights that smelled like someone else's cologne, the times she missed a game or a recital and came back with a smile that never touched her eyes. When you run a cleaning and restoration company, you learn to hear the house. A stuck hinge tells you more about a life than a million confessions. A door that resists closure has its own language. I began to translate my family into mechanical metaphors because my work is the way I make sense of the world. Betrayal is that sudden shear of a pin under pressure. Love becomes the well-seated tumbler that once turned smoothly before someone dropped grit into the lock. I wrote everything down: dates, times, smells, songs, the exact tone of her voice when she said, "Some of us have jobs that matter." I saved receipts, pictures, the emails Tom sent. It felt like building a toolkit, not the kind that fixed a leaky roof, but the kind you might need to dismantle a life carefully so you didn't damage what you'd left behind for the kids. I won't lie. The plan felt cold at times. I kept my hands steady because I believed in precision. There is a calculus to this: legal protection, financial steps, who gets what, how to make sure the business survives. I think that's what saved me from smashing every mirror. I let reason do the heavy lifting while grief sat like a stone in my chest. On the lawn our kids still played tag, their laughter a discordant soundtrack to the quiet engine of my plotting. Noah asked less and watched more. Grace asked everything and I began to answer as honestly as I could without burning bridges I might need later. Ben kept asking if I could fix his baseball glove. The logger's rhythm of my days, cleaning invoices, inventory lists, floor plans, kept me anchored in a world that still made sense. And at night, when the farmhouse settled in the way old houses do, with small creaks like bones finding their positions, I would sit and let the journal glow in the lamplight until my hand cramped. There are moments when betrayal becomes more than a rupture, it becomes a mirror. I started seeing where I'd stopped showing up in my marriage, the quiet compromises and the things I told myself were small. I also saw the deliberate decisions on her side, plans that required a degree of premeditation, the choice of a country club 3 towns over, the late-night texts she hid like contraband. I wanted to be honest with you here, reader. This isn't merely a tale of being cheated on. It's a study in how a person who fixes other people's messes learns to fix their own life without becoming broken in the process. Some nights the bitterness wanted to take over, some nights the urge to break every picture frame felt righteous. But I kept thinking of the kids. They were not the mechanism to be corrected. They were the reason I became careful. I kept the journal. I met with Whitaker. I planned. Every evening Maeve came home late, the farmhouse air filling with the sterile scent of someone else's perfume. The music she'd hum would hang like a looped recording, and I would know which bar, which laugh, which hand had made it possible for her to thrive somewhere that wasn't our kitchen table. I kept cataloging. Every missing recital. Every excuse. Every song. Every lie. The machine of our life was documented, every bolt labeled, every loose nut noted. That was my armor. This is where the story pauses, not because it ends, but because this is the place where decisions get made. The lever gets pulled. The lock either holds or it gives. I had the tools. I had the paperwork. I had the pictures. I had a lawyer and a small, stubborn belief that you don't have to be destroyed by other people's choices. I kept working, because it's what I do. I kept the business tight, the crew paid, the trucks maintained. I started seeing the house as restoration in miniature. You can strip away layers until you find the rot, and then you replace what needs replacing, solidly, with something that won't give. This wasn't a romantic reconciliation, an emotional romance that healed the wound with sentimental glue. It was a precise, necessary dismantling. Yet even in that clinical approach, a strange tenderness remained, because I wasn't destroying the family so much as removing the parts that weren't fit to remain. The real reconciliation I hoped for was one day to teach my kids that integrity matters, that complex relationships require work, and that sometimes the only way to protect those you love is to let go of the people who refuse to be honest. I don't know exactly where this ends. I know what I planned next: legal steps, financial fences, an uncompromising ledger. I also know this: the work of my hands, the smell of the solvent, the buzz of the buffer, the precise fit of new hardware, has taught me to value what is real. And sometimes, cleaning away the grime reveals what was always underneath: a house with good rafters, a yard for children to grow, and, maybe, a chance to rebuild without rot. I wrote it all down with dates and times. I also started recording our conversations. Vermont is a one-party consent place, meaning I could legally record any conversation I was in. I bought a small digital recorder and slipped it into my shirt pocket like a spare key. The breakthrough came one Wednesday. Maeve was in the shower after another late shift, and I was sitting with Grace over long division when her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She'd left it face up, for once. A mistake she never made. The text was from Dr. McKay: "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same place, same time. You're incredible." I took a screenshot and moved the notification into a secure folder on my laptop before she even finished toweling off. Tomorrow I'd have Tom follow her again. But then I had proof on her own device that her boss was more than a boss. Proof is an ugly, clarifying thing. This was not a passionate love story or an emotional romance. It was a seductive narrative of convenience and self-interest, a lesson in how complex relationships can unravel. The hardest part wasn't learning Maeve had been unfaithful. It was watching my children feel it like a slow animal moving through the house. Noah stopped asking her to his games. Grace stopped dragging her homework projects to the table. Ben came to me for everything, even things he used to ask his mother about. They felt the shift, even when they couldn't name it. Their mother was choosing someone else over them, over the family we'd built. That made my decision easier. I wasn't fighting for a marriage anymore. I was fighting for a childhood. And I wasn't going to lose that fight. Friday evening brought the collision I'd been bracing for. Maeve was sliding into her scrubs when Ben barreled down the stairs, face streaked with tears. "Mommy," he cried, clutching at her top. "I need help with my science project. It's due Monday." Maeve shrugged him off like a nuisance. "Ben, I don't have time," she snapped. "Can't you see I'm trying to get ready for work?" "You promised you'd help me," he wailed. "I never promised anything," she said coldly. "Ask your father. He's good at cleaning up messes." Those words landed in the kitchen like a slammed drawer. I had the recorder nestled in my shirt pocket. There are phrases you pray you never have to preserve, and there are phrases you keep like evidence. "He's 8, I said quietly. "He needs help with homework." Maeve turned, exhaustion and impatience carved into her face. "You know what, Owen? I'm tired of this. I'm tired of these kids always needing something. I never wanted 3 children. You forced this on me and now I'm supposed to pretend I'm happy about it." Grace stood on the stair landing in her pajamas, eyes swollen. "Why don't you love us anymore?" she asked, voice raw. Maeve looked at our daughter with a kind of bitter, unfiltered contempt that made me feel like the floor had given way. For a second I thought she'd soften. Instead she grabbed her bag and left, saying, "I have to go to work. Some of us have important things to do." I held the children on the couch until their sobs thinned to sleepy whimpers. Noah came down later and slid onto the arm of my chair, jaw tight. "Dad," he said, "you know she's not really going to work, right?" I looked at my 16-year-old son and felt the world tilt. "How long have you known?" "A couple weeks. I saw her at the mall with some old guy when she was supposed to be at the hospital. They were holding hands. I called Tom that night. I need everything you can get, times, places, photos. Fast. She's starting to show her true colors in front of the kids. End this before she does more damage," I told him. "When you make a life of fixing other people's messes, of taking dirty rooms and making them usable again, you learn to value documentation like oxygen." That Tuesday in October was the culmination of days I'd spent moving essentials out of the farmhouse, little by little. Photo albums, my father's letters, legal papers, anything that mattered went into a storage unit across town. I prepared the children as gently as I could. Maeve kissed me goodbye like she had for 18 years, completely unaware that it would be the last time she closed the farmhouse door as my wife. After the school buses had gone, I loaded the last boxes into my truck. The dogs squirmed into the back. Maeve had never liked them much. On the kitchen table I left my wedding band and a single scrap of paper with 4 words written on it, "I know about Arthur." That afternoon the kids stayed with my brother James. Noah understood, Grace trusted me, Ben asked if his mom would come back. "Mom can't hurt you with words anymore," I told him, the way you tell a child the truth about monsters. My phone started ringing at 6. An unknown number flashed. Maeve called 17 times that night. I let the calls go to voicemail. First denial, "Owen, I don't know what you're talking about," then fury, "How dare you take my children and disappear like a coward," then bargaining, "Please, we can work this out. I made a mistake. We can save this." I was done saving what she'd chosen to burn. Wednesday, Tom texted, "Maeve showed up at my office demanding to know where you are." Thursday, Mark called, she'd hired Caroline Sloan, a high-priced attorney. The retainer suggested Arthur was underwriting her defense. Everything pointed to the same conclusion: this wasn't some drunken mistake. It was a plan. 1 week after I moved out, she found me at the storage unit. She looked hollowed out, red-rimmed eyes, hair unwashed, clothes the kind that say someone has stopped pretending. "We need to talk," she begged. "No," I said simply. "We don't." "I made a mistake," she said. "It's over with him. I choose our family." Her face went white when she noticed I still had the recorder. "You can't use that against me," she whispered. "Actually, I can. And I will." She walked back into the empty house that day and discovered why there was nothing left for her but an echo. The fallout was immediate and loud. Within days the town had the story. She came to my brother James's doorstep 3 times begging for the children. He told her the same thing each time: they weren't ready to see her. Mother opened the door once and said, "You told my grandchildren you never wanted them. You broke your son's heart for some rich man's attention. There's nothing to fix." Maeve screamed in the school parking lot about me kidnapping the children. Neighbors watched. Someone called the police. She hired a private investigator who was terrible at being subtle. He sat in the grocery store parking lot, obvious as a red light. I called Mark. "She's following me," I said. "Good," he replied. "Document everything. It shows pattern and harassment." 3 weeks later Tom called with the twist none of us expected: Arthur had cut her loose. He'd seen her go into Arthur's office at the development firm and come out shaking. Arthur walked away. Suddenly Maeve had lost husband, lover, and, soon, her children. Small towns love the spectacle of a fall. We served the divorce papers at her workplace on a cold December morning. I had Mark deliver them there on purpose, the humiliation precise, controlled. At the nurse's station she crumpled. She said it was all a mistake. The papers were thorough: adultery, abandonment of parental duties, emotional abuse of minors, financial deception. Caroline Sloan filed the predictable motions: emergency custody, spousal support, allegation of abduction, attempts to recast me as the instigator. Mark laughed at the theatrics. She was grasping at straws. The temporary hearing in January was a lesson in how evidence becomes truth. We presented GPS data, timestamps, photos from the hotel, employment records proving she wasn't on overtime, and finally the audio of her telling Ben she never wanted him. When that recording played, Maeve went pale. Judge Whitcomb listened without indulgence. "This court will not reward deliberate abandonment," he said. The ruling gave me temporary full custody and supervised visitation for Maeve pending psychological evaluation. Justice moved slowly, but it moved. 3 months later Mark called again. The court-ordered evaluation recommended DNA testing for all 3 children, standard in contested cases. The results arrived with that peculiar clinical cruelty that makes the world tilt. "There's something you need to know about Ben," Mark said carefully. "He's not biologically yours." The words hit like a physical blow. Ben, my boy who climbed into my lap for stories, who trusted me completely, was not mine by blood. The lab ran the test twice. No shared markers. My chest felt vacant in a new and private way. Nights she grew defensive when I asked about timing. The affair with Arthur was not the first breach. Mark explained the legal angle: this actually strengthened our case. It demonstrated a pattern stretching back years. But the doctrine of psychological paternity matters too. A man who has parented a child since birth is protected by law for the child's best interest. Removing Ben could cause more harm than the truth would justify. The final divorce hearing in March was cold and clean. Maeve arrived a shadow. Arthur's wife had filed for divorce. Arthur had vanished from the public scene. Caroline Sloan argued for joint custody. claiming therapy and reform. Judge Whitcomb was unmoved. The ruling was decisive: custody to me, the house, the business accounts, retirement assets retained. Maeve left with her car and personal effects, no alimony, minimal supervised visitation. She begged at the courthouse steps. "They're my children, too," she said. I stopped and looked at her. "Maeve," I said, "you told Ben you never wanted him. You broke Grace's heart. You destroyed Noah's trust. You handed them away. They're mine now. I'm not letting anyone hurt them again." 5 years pass, and the sharpness dulls into something steadier. Ben is 13, captain of his basketball team, and he doesn't know about the DNA test. I decided he never needs to. My presence, bedtime stories, bandage changing, early drives to practice, made me his father in every sense that matters. Grace is 17, heading to college on a scholarship, funny and fierce. Noah studies engineering and calls every Sunday. Maeve works retail, lives in a small apartment, and never remarried. 2 years ago I met Sarah at Ben's game. She's a teacher and a widow with a daughter named Emma. We took things slow because I needed someone who wanted all of us. When she said yes last Christmas, Ben hugged her first. Maeve asked to see the kids 3 times over 5 years, each time they said no. Judge Whitcomb terminated her parental rights 2 years ago after she stopped attending supervised visits. I received a letter from Maeve recently, an apology of sorts, about being confusing and selfish. I threw it away. No drama. No ceremony. My business has tripled, 22 employees, contracts across 3 counties. The kids help sometimes. Ben loves driving the supply truck. This morning Sarah flipped pancakes while I packed lunches. Emma and Ben argued about which movie to watch. Normal family noise, the kind that makes you feel you're finally on safe ground. Maeve came home to an empty house 5 years ago and spent months wondering why everything collapsed. The answer is simple: she chose a mirage over the machine that had been steady for years. I chose to build something better. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, steady, stubborn, deliberate. That quiet rebuilding has been my loudest answer.